Hey, what's up guys? It's ArtDude47 here, and we're back for another dating simulator devlog. So I've got the game running here in the Unity editor, and as you'll see, I've already made some graphical improvements just because I do feel like those help get the point across, help what I'm doing. So you'll see I just made a gradient text box, and I've got the scrolling effect back. I've also adjusted the UI just a little bit to make it look and feel better. So I added the calendar background I've been talking about. I also added drop shadows to each of the UI elements, which I think look pretty good. And then if you'll notice, we've got player, what should I focus on this week? So now I do have the beginning of a dialogue system in place. So for now, we'll go ahead and work on humanities. You'll see still we're cycling through the week. And we've got an animation each day. And then we've got our typewriter effect. It's Saturday, what should I do today? For now, we will do humanities one more time. And we'll work science for today. And now this week, we will focus on working out. And so you see, it cycles through all of that as normal. Everything works there. So now what I'd like to do is show you what I've been working on since then. You'll see here I now have an NPC manager and a test NPC. If I mark that this NPC has not been met, then we can attempt to meet the NPC in-game. Alright, so this NPC is looking for 10 fitness, which we start on, and it will only meet you if you're working out. So we'll go ahead and work out, and right away, pretty girl is walking right towards me. So you'll see we've got test NPC, we've got the sprite popping up, and they talk to the player. Then it goes straight into the activity for that day and works just like that. Cycles through the rest of the week. So now I can pretty easily add NPCs. If you see over here in the inspector, I've got a custom element called a stat requirement, which takes the stat name and then what the value is, and then an activity, which is just a string for what activity the player's doing. I've also got date location dialogues, which is a custom thing I've made. It takes the location name and then any dialogue that's possible for that location, as well as the introduction. And then we've got ask to walk home, or NPC asks to walk home, which I haven't implemented yet, but those are some things that I figure the NPCs will do. The NPC, of course, has a name, sprite, and then a date of birth. So with those added, now I can make as many NPCs as I want. The introductions will all work just fine. So it's time to start getting into doing some things like working on the dating mechanic and calling NPCs and running into them at school and all of those good things. Now that we're at this point, we could start to work on those, and that is what I'm going to work on next. I've been trying to keep more organized with what I'm working on, so actually next is I've tried to simplify the dialogue system as much as possible. The other one was just getting too complicated. It kept needing more and more things to work. So this time I'm trying to go simple. We're using scriptable objects for the dialogues. They take a speaker name, they take a mood sprite, or none, and that'll work just fine. And then they've got dialogue text, and then whether there's a response or a next dialogue that it links to. What I'm working on now is making it so if one entity is going to spew a lot of dialogue, like say is just an NPC talking at the player, it's the same NPC. Rather than having to make a bunch of scriptable objects, I'll type the whole thing in this dialogue text, and then the game will automatically split it into segments that will fit into the text box. So that's what I'm working on now. I will check back in with you once I've got it done. Alright, I'm back. I completed the task relatively easily. I'm still struggling a little bit with how much code I actually want to show in these, how in-depth we should get, but what I did now was when we start a dialogue, it gets the dialogue entry, changes that to the current dialogue, Then I added a queue called dialogue chunks. So we clear it out, make sure it's empty, and then we split dialogue into chunks and we pass the current dialogue. So then I've got this function, split dialogue into chunks. We take the max characters per chunk, which is just how many characters can fit into my text box, which happens to be 180. And then I've got this kind of loop to make sure that if the dialogue length is greater than 0, or as long as it's greater than 0, and then if the dialogue length is less than the max characters per chunk, we just enqueue the whole dialogue into the chunks and we break out of there. So then what we do is we find the last space before the end of the chunk. So that way we're not cutting off in the middle of words. And if the last space index ends up being negative, then we could fit the whole chunk in there, and so that's what we do. Otherwise, we just trim it to where that space was, and then we enqueue that chunk. And so then we add that chunk to the queue, and we could just cycle through the queue. So in practice, if we run the game, we are going to need to make it so we haven't met the NPC, because that's where I put the test dialogue. And so now you'll see if I choose to work out, pretty girl's walking right towards me. Good morning, and notice that you're out here running. So you could see maybe we could run together. It stops right there. Sometime I'm now talking quite a lot more than necessary because I'm trying to test a new feature, which it automatically, and so you see it automatically cuts to fit onto the screen at once. And then the game continues from there. So now, basically, instead of writing a bunch of different dialogues and making sure that they will fit inside the dialogue box, I could just write it out into one scriptable object, the whole dialogue that I want to get across, and the game will automatically split it for me. So that's going to make writing dialogues a lot easier in the future. So that's what I've got now. I've got to figure out what I'm going to work on next. I'm going to go into my Trello board, and then I'll update you guys when I've got some more features going. Alright, so I'm back, and I am in a build of the game here, the 0.4 build, and I think I'm at a good spot to show you what I've gotten done for the remainder of the week. So first thing you'll probably notice is it now says that I'm at home. Of course, that's a placeholder graphic, but it gets the point across. There is a location now. So a couple things I want to show you. First, I've got some tooltips. They do still need a little work, but they at least will tell us what the buttons are until I get a graphic added. And then I couldn't fit the calendar over here without making an odd number of buttons, so I made this just pull up the actual calendar. And I'm noticing this in the build for the first time, that you're probably noticing the same thing, which is that the calendar should actually draw over the dialog box. So we'll get that taken care of. That'll be an easy switch, but we've got a calendar now. And now if we go to work out, for instance, we change locations. We're at the local park now, and we're meeting an NPC. That's why it says meet in the background. Then it changes us to the running location, and the game works the same from there. So we've just got this little transition, and then we've got a location indicator that pops up from the corner to tell us where we are, and then of course it switches out the background as well. The other thing you may have saw is while we were meeting the NPC, it was actually a bigger background image. That's something Tokimeki Memorial does that I like. It allows more detail in there when you're talking with an NPC, so it gets rid of some of these UI pieces in order to show that background. So I am going to go ahead and get this calendar fixed real quick, and then we'll be able to call it an end of an episode, I think. Alright, so we're back into the build of the game, and as you can see, if we hit the calendar, it now appears above the dialog box, so you can see the full calendar. You'll see today's date is currently highlighted, and it works, of course, if we do something for the week. Forgot that this would meet an NPC for us, but we'll go ahead and work out for the week. And now on Saturday, if we pull up the calendar, you'll see Saturday's highlighted, and Monday no longer is. So everything's working with the calendar functionality. There are a few things I've got to get figured out with it. I think I'm going to have to make the calendar a bit smaller because I think I may want the dialog box visible during calendar interactions, so that way the player knows what they're supposed to be doing. Otherwise, I may just do it like the dialog will say, okay, select a date for to ask the NPC out on. And then when the player clicks, the calendar will pop up. And so while they can't see the text anymore, they should have read that they're selecting a date. So I'll figure it out, but I think this is a good place to stop the episode. You could see I'm getting close to getting caught up to where we were before I decided I needed to refactor the code. So I'm pretty happy with that. And I do thank you guys for watching. Please let me know in the comments if you have any questions or would like to see anything. If you want me to go into any more depth on some of the code or anything like that, just let me know. But in the meantime, I thank you for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.